Well, welcome everybody. And once we get all the slides going and Milan back, we're going to jump into the world of maps. Like I guess you figured out from the invitation, the Milky Way map and what we can do with that one.
All right, now it works. You see the screen?
Gideon, can you hear us? It's supposed to be on the new music.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Close this.
No, not the music again. We go with the presentation.
Yes. All right. Do you see the screen? Do you hear us? And excellent. Great. Thank you. So welcome to this webinar. This is about bridging the gaps with the Milky Way Enterprise Map. And I'm Milan. And we have Annika also.
Yep, I'm Annika.
And yeah, so this is a webinar of the Intersection Group. We are a not-for-profit organization based in Vienna, but active worldwide. And we want to help people create better enterprises. I put a little asterisk there to say what better means. So those that are more useful than others, those that deliver on their promises, those that perform well, and pursue a clear purpose. And in order to do so, sometimes we have to sit in meetings, right?
Oh yeah, I guess you've been in those meetings, all of you, where you're discussing things and you're hearing a good idea, and then after a while, when the person presenting gets quiet, you get a picture in your head. You can take the next slide, and when you start talking again, you realize that your picture in your head was not the same as the neighbor on the table or the neighbor in the Zoom call or whatever type of meeting we're having. It's rather a situation where we have so many different mental models that we're having a hard time communicating with each other and really, missing targets. Maybe it starts out friendly and nice, but after a while it could be conflict because people are really not understanding where we're coming from. And it's not like any of these pictures are wrong. It's just that they are from one perspective and maybe flavored by what you think is important based on a number of things. So let's say if we're in this meeting and then the next topic is a new colleague from who just started working, and that person starts out with saying, I'm coming from Fiumicino near Rome in Italy. What happens in our heads? Well, most likely we will have some geographical reference, depending on how familiar you are with Italy or Southern Europe or Europe as a whole. You would zoom in to different places. And if you've been to this little town just outside Rome, maybe you even have been walking the canals and you have a friend there or something. And the point is here that we can zoom in thanks to the fact that we have a shared geography. We have a shared sense of what are we moving around in and what are we zooming and finding places in. And the assumption here that I've been working with for a very, very long time with this Milky Way mapping thing is, can we actually use the same geography as we do in a physical place or in, when you're finding your way in a new city? Could we make the same metaphor, but for our enterprise? Would that be possible? What would a map like that look like? And the fact is that we tried, and when we saw that there was one dimension of the geography that we could really cling on to, and that was the business geography, what I called. You can take the next slide, Milan, because what I realized is that what's consistent over time in most organizations is the overall value flow. And that would be how do we create value? How do we create new ideas for new products or services? How do we produce them? How do we sell, market them, and make them available to people? How do we deliver them? And how do we figure out whether this was a good idea or not? Learning, we should probably get some money in there too. And then we can start learning. So the idea is to take this notion of an actual map and then move into finding a business geography by using this value flow thinking and creating places in the map for different types of activities. So if you were to think for a while, what would the value flow for your enterprise be? If you take the next slide, could you do that? Could you figure out what is it that you are doing? Are you in a product company or a service company? Are you consultancy? Do you provide services? What is it that you do? And can you see if there is an overall value flow that most of your colleagues could sort of see and say, yeah, well, even though we might have a specific thing in my part of the company, but I totally see this shared picture. So send it to this, just draw as we speak, and then you send it to the napkin at Intersection Point group, and we'll take a look at it afterwards.
Yes, so if you just draw yours, take a picture, send it to napkin at intersection.group. You don't have to draw, you can also write, but we would encourage you to draw, because as you will see later, the technique that we're using is quite visual. Yeah, so when I first encountered this Milky Way map idea, I was really impressed by the versatility to it. You can just take this one dimension, which is basically time. It's how we create what we are creating, how we are doing what we are doing over time, and apply it to any enterprise. Based on a lot of conversations, we started actually blending this methodology with the scope of what we call enterprise design, so designing better enterprises. And one way to explain is to take Simon Sinek's really famous book and famous message to say, okay, most organizations really know what they are doing, and some know how they are doing it, and only few know actually why they are doing it. So if you blend these two things, if you blend why are we doing it, how we are doing it, and what are we doing with the Milky Way flow over time, you get to what we call the enterprise on a napkin. So you take the flow, and this is a napkin on my kitchen table. And so we ask ourselves, okay, why do we exist? What is the reason? What's our enterprise good for? What's the entrepreneurial idea behind it? And then on the outside is like, what are we doing for people? What's our role in their lives? What's the experience we are creating for them? And then in between, we can basically bridge the gap and decide or design how we are doing it. How do we get whatever we want to do delivered to those people? And so these three dimensions are the fundamental dimensions that we use in enterprise design. It's what we call the identity. So who are we? Why do we exist? What matters to us? What is the address again? Yes, of course. So it's napkin. I will put it in the.
I can put, yeah.
Okay. Who are we really? So that's one of the important facets of the enterprise. Another one is, what are we capable of doing? How does it all fit together? How does it work? Which is what we call the enterprise architecture. And finally, we have the experience, which is the facet about what are we doing for people? How do we create value for them? What's the role that we play in their lives? And you can assign those to the napkin sketch. You can say, okay, in the middle, we actually have why we exist, which is the root of our entrepreneurial activity. On the outside, we have what we are doing for people. And in the middle, we have how we are doing it. And this gives us the base geography. And we also have the intersections. So between the facets, we have some elements, some areas where they intersect. And you might know these dimensions from your work with enterprises. So between the identity and the architecture, we have to organize ourselves to take our entrepreneurial ambition and why we exist and actually make it happen run processes, develop capabilities, and deliver them. With those capabilities, with that architecture, we can develop a product in the sense of something we are making and offering, and that is designed to appear in people's experiences, in our customers' experience. And we also, as an enterprise, we appear in these experiences, and that's how we are being perceived by people, which is our brand, which is kind of the manifestation of our identity. And so with these facets, we can navigate what we are talking about when we are looking at enterprises. We can filter out things that we want to look at and those that we don't want to look at right now. But in the end, every enterprise is basically the white light in the middle. So you have always everything at the same time. But by putting these lenses on, we can sit around the table and we can be like, okay, is what we are talking about now more about the architecture? Is it about the identity? Is it about the experience? Is it about something in between? Who do we need to talk to? Who do we need to invite? And what does it do to the enterprise, which is where the map comes in? We went further after meeting Wolfgang and the whole crew of the Architectural Thinking Association, which is one of the predecessing organizations of the Intersection Group, and applied architectural thinking to this, which means we looked at what is behind each of these facets, what is inside, what are the elements and how they are interrelated. And that gives us this picture of all the elements. And it's not to say that this is everything that exists. It's just something that we can model, that we can work with when designing enterprises. So we look at the purpose, we look at the story, which is the identity. So why do we exist, and how do we tell the world about that and what we are doing? We can look at the capabilities and the process, which is our architecture. We can look at customer or employee or other people's journeys and the tasks or jobs that they need to get done, which is the role that we are playing in their lives. And we can look at what products, what brands, what organizations do we have to make. And we will not get into the details of this model. It's based, as you can see, on the FBS, the Function, Behavior, Structure Ontology, which is one of the design theories that we are using. But we will more look at how do we simplify our understanding of the enterprise. And one important thing there is definitions. So for each of these words, each of these terms, we have a very short one-liner of what it is that we're actually talking about. Avoiding some of the, you could say, jargon words of some of the disciplines that are typically involved when shaping these kind of things. By the way, all these terms have passed the teenager test, which means we show them to teenagers and see if teenagers can make sense of them. And some words like value streams, for example, were kicked out that way from our core model. So how can we map that onto a geography? So you have in the middle, the flow. This is a typical flow of any enterprise, but we generally say you should adapt it to yours. But any enterprise, you can start with this one as a generic one. So you plan what you want to do, you make something, you market it, you deliver it, and then you learn and you do it again. And we blend that with the three facets and with the three rings of the underlying topography, you could say. So why are we doing it? How are we doing it? And what are we doing for people ultimately? And we can map the elements on that. We can map the tasks, the capabilities, and the purpose, which is basically the function of our enterprise. Like, why does it exist? Why did we make it? What do we need to do well, or what do we need to do in total? Like, what do we need to achieve? And how do we solve people's problems, their tasks? And then how would that look like as a flow, which is the journeys, the processes, and the story? And we can also look again at the intersections and look at, okay, how do we need to organize ourselves? How can we chunk the teams and the structure? What kind of products do we want to make? What kind of offerings and services and so on? And how will all of that result in a brand that we can put out into the market and into the world? So with that in mind, we will switch to models and maps. And this is where we have a question to you, which is, what kind of maps and models are you making and using frequently? So you can either scan with your phone the QR code. Let me just go to the other slide. Here it is. So if you had a chance, you could scan the QR code. You can also go to i-g.at/vote. Let me put that into the chat. And yeah, we have some votes going on. So, wow, the domain or data model.
I think we're two groups here. I added actually one of those domain and data models are for me.
Right, so this is just a sense to see who we have in the room, because usually, you can tell a little bit like what background people have by looking at what kind of models or maps they're typically making to communicate. Also because of the idea that in the end, all of the models and maps we are making are just there to have conversations, right? To inform our dialogue, to point out things, to think together, and to take decisions together. So it kind of reveals what people are looking at as part of the facet model. So yeah, we have a few domain or data model fans. For now, the winning model is just slightly the customer journey map.
Yeah.
Followed by the capability map.
Again, the two groups.
Oh, now they're equal.
Well, yes, look at that and take a snapshot. Yeah.
The organization chart has fallen out of favor lately. Yeah, two people are making Wardley maps. I can encourage you to look into that if you don't know that. It's an interesting map. I would say it's one that, at least for me, wasn't really intuitive to read or make, but it's really interesting once you got it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's really worth sort of getting into. It takes a while until you get it, but it's really valuable because it's another dimension.
Yes.
Yeah.
Holly says org charts are quite disappointing. I would agree to that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have actually a working group led by Pascal Dussard in our association that looks into designing organization as a facet or as an intersection, and also what other things we could make or model other than org charts hierarchies. Then we have application architectures and service blueprint, which I think are closer to bridging, I would say, bridging an ambition and a realization.
Yeah.
The business model canvas, I did the same vote a few years back, and it got way more votes than today. Yeah, so I think one of the points we want to make with this is there's no clear winner.
No. And there are a lot of dimensions you need to take into account and try to figure out how do you see this as one.
Yes, exactly. And so the the message is that all of these are helpful in certain situations. It's good if you have them all at in your bucket list of things that you might want to make, and it's good if you can connect them. And if you change something in one, trace what will be the effect on the other. And that's exactly what the Milky Way map is designed to do. And so let me switch back to the presentation. Thank you for your vote. Yes. We will incorporate the results. So we are going to look at a case, which is a train company. It's not any particular train company. It's an example. So it's a generic made-up example, just because, most people took trains in their lives, and we kind of have an idea what train companies are doing. And this is a Japanese train. I'm not sure if everyone would agree with Wolfgang on the comment on beauty. It's generally a...
Just leave it.
But let's look at that company. And so if we look again at the facet model and the different dimensions and the flow and everything, so how would we map this train company? And so what I did to inform this example, the simplified example, is look at some things that these companies put out there. And the reason why this was the Shinkansen, which I found on the JR East website, is that this train company from Japan actually had maybe the most compelling statements on identity. So in the annual report, my friend Tomomi found this chart where it says what they want to do. So they want to do things like make employees and their families happy, realize seamless mobility, make cities more comfortable. They are looking into business development of regional areas and also international business. They are working on shared infrastructure. They're working on lifestyles and the creation of interesting, I think better, more livable cities. They're looking into the environment, like preventing global warming, diversifying energy sources, and so on. And so when we talk about identity, this is exactly what we're looking for. It's not really what are your processes. It's not really we want to be convenient for customers or something like that. It's what is our ambition as a company? What's the impact we want to make on the world? And this often gets automatically a little bit out of the operational or product scope of the company itself. So in here, we can find something that we can map, like, for example, bringing people together, realizing seamless mobility, working on new data-driven services, building a shared infrastructure, and safety. And these are just examples. And so then we can map onto our Milky Way, and we can put them into the Y layer, the identity layer. So we want to plan how to build that shared infrastructure, want to make things that bring people together, market our offerings of seamless mobility. When we deliver, so when the trains are actually running, they should be safe. We want to look at the data we have and provide new services. Now, let's look at the experience. And this, many people, especially the designers, might know. It's a very classic example of a customer experience map or journey map. There are nuances in between. I took this example from Jim Kalbeck's book, Mapping Experiences. And what you can see there is there are some phases of the journey. There are some tasks, like I talk to my friends, I Google, where do I want to go, look for destinations, try different routes, review fares. And so these elements we can map really, really easily. But we also find some elements on top, the guiding principles. Let me just go back here. So, for example, we want to, people choose rail travel because it's convenient, easy, and flexible. It's part of a larger travel process. The service should be respectful, effective, and personable. So these are actually ambitions that we can also map to the identity. So we find maybe the same stuff in there. We find something else. So this is how we look at different perspectives and we make the connections. But we also have the customer journey stages, and we have some tasks like consider destinations, look up routes, review fares, get a ticket, pay, troubleshoot if it doesn't work, get to the station, get on the train, and if it was very late, claim a refund. This is another example from the book where you have the same journey, but with different channels. So which of these things do you do on the website, mobile, for which you would use the phone? So we can map that also in the same language, saying, okay, we have some channels, we have some tasks, we have some journey steps. And we can map that, especially the tasks, onto the Milky Way, saying, and you see that the customer journey is basically a little snake, because it starts outside of our realm. Like I'm considering to travel somewhere, I talk to friends, and then I look up the ideas where I want to go, and maybe I don't actually look first on the railway company's website. Maybe I look on travel portals or something like that. I look up the routes and I review the fares I pay, I get the tickets, I actually travel, and so on. And this gives us the connection between the customer's world or the passenger's world and ourselves. And Wolfgang is asking the title and the author of the book. So it's Jim Kalberg, and the book is called Mapping Experiences. Came out in just a second edition in O'Reilly. And then there's some technology and some infrastructure involved in these things, right? So we can look at that as well. And this is a picture from a UK website on rail engineering. There you have some goals again, but you also have an overview of all the operational things that are involved: R&D, coordinating between trains, managing the tracks, handling the energy, planning, and so on. So these we can also map and capture as things that we need to do in order to bridge what we want to deliver in the experience, and what we set out to do in our identity. And in there, so we find things like managing the customer relationship, running innovation projects, running analytics and intelligence, so that we can actually come up with these great products and services, managing the energy, scheduling the trains, optimizing costs, and so on. And those, if you have the luck to work with a very large company, you might find a lot of these kind of diagrams. This is actually from a research paper, because usually they are secret, but this might be a BPMN process representation of one very important capability, which is handle claims. So if your train was late and you want to get a refund, this is what's happening inside the company. And in the end, we have to connect to this reality with all our designs. Other than that, we will not have any impact, but we also have to take this reality and connect it to what people actually want from the company, the tasks that they have, that they come to us with, and what we actually want to do in order to, not just optimize and incrementally improve things that already exist. So with that said, we can map those things again on the timeline and can say, okay, we first actually do some strategic planning. We manage our resources, we develop products, plan our infrastructure, manage the catalog of destinations, engage with people on social media, get some trip ideas with a recommendation engine, for example, process orders, manage capacity, and so on. And some people here who are really into capability maps might say now, oh, these are not capabilities. And this is something that, so I would encourage all of you, if you are here, to go into Wolfgang Goebel's webinar about the next generation of capability maps, because we have a lot of opinion on that. And we think that capabilities should be, should use terminology that the business is used to. So if the business calls it sales, we call it sales. Even though some people might say, okay, sales is not a capability, maybe it's a process, maybe it's a department. But yeah, not getting into that, what we are looking at here is what is the term we can use to describe what needs to be done in order to bridge what we want to do, our ambition, and what our customers want, their experience and their top tasks or jobs to be done.
And I'd like to add here that there's always a number of choices when you do maps and when you design things. And the thing that we really want to stress is to make sure that you put the capability into the right business context, into where it's actually being used in the overall flow. So that is, in this way of thinking and mapping, more important than to aggregate it and get all the things that would have, I don't know, something to do with product in one place. So that is a choice, and it's a deliberate one. Yeah. Go ahead.
So you saw that in these simplified examples, we kept it quite simple. So we only modeled on the outside some tasks that people want to do. with our help as a railway company. We modeled our purpose, for example, providing seamless mobility, and we modeled some capabilities. But the actual model is bigger. So we also have, for example, in between any capability and a task, we have to come up with some kind of product or offering or service. We use the term product, again, in order to simplify things, but what we're really talking about is anything that we want to offer to people. And so the complexity is in the model behind, and it's not only that, like we can actually zoom. We can zoom out, and we find that we are actually seldom alone as an enterprise. We are part of some ecosystem. So in a railway company case, maybe there's one company that's doing, like in France, that's actually the case. So there's Voyage SNCF, which is where you book your travel. Then there's another company that actually runs the trains. And there's, again, another one that runs the tracks. And that also works with all the other companies that put trains on those tracks. So we are part of an ecosystem, and we can zoom out and look at what part of this ecosystem are we doing, where do we rely on others. And we can also zoom in and look, for example, at the details of the experience design, of the product design, of the organization design, or of our architecture, and get into all those things that are at the bottom that we call the intervention space. So where do we find the leverage points to actually make an impact? Like which perspective helps us to have an impact on the enterprise and to actually trigger change? So if we want to look, for example, at the architecture in more detail, and maybe at the same time, kind of zoom in or filter for just the architecture, but also zoom out to look at what needs to be done in the group, on the group level of our railway group, we might find this model, which is a capability map, where we can look at, okay, everything that needs to be done, and where do we find the greatest cohesion? How do we organize everything that we are doing? How do we support it with applications and IT? How do we chunk people into organization units, or how do we enable them to chunk themselves rather in the modern way? But we can reuse the same type of element to do so, and make the connection between the Milky Way basically as a context model and this map as a more hierarchical representation of the same thing, everything that needs to be done. We can also look at representation of several companies, and that gives you this kind of, I actually like a lot that it looks like an amoeba almost, like some bacteria kind of life form. So you have those enterprises that are rotating and going through the value chain. And maybe we have the travel agency that has some ambition. Maybe there's an operations entity, railway infrastructure. We have other people like booking portals, regulators, and competition. And you see our customer journey actually starts with our travel agency, but then there's some part that is shared with the railway operations, and we see how both our capabilities have to work together in order to actually solve the task. And then our railway company actually has some shared capabilities with the infrastructure, because they have to route those trains together, otherwise there will be problems. So,
and I also think that this is kind of interesting, because some of these things you can really set up and tie together, and some of them are just things that you hope for. I mean, we would like people to find this route, but maybe they don't. We would like people to find these combinations, and maybe they don't. So this is the sort of more fluent way of looking at things, and how actual networking and ecosystems work, and how we can set ourselves up for being connected in easier ways maybe, and find easier ways to interact with others and open up our world to others to make use of, and being able to make use of others' capabilities or services or whatever. So I think this is an interesting way of looking at it.
All right, so we will spend 10 more minutes to show you, to blow your minds with more realistic models, because this is really a simplified example.
Yeah, we will zoom in, and those of you who have seen parts of the Milky Way before, we've sort of moved ourselves into this new way of combining all the different dimensions in the base map. So here is a version where we have expanded the capability part of the architecture part, and we have added IT systems, the white small boxes, and also some integration. Could be either actual system integration or maybe process integration, where you would inform somebody else that you're done, or somebody's listening to your business events, and when something has happened, they're taking the next step. So this is a way of sort of zooming in and opening up a layer in this map. I think you can take the next one. And here is a map where we have taken the same view as before, but we have added the organizational units in a fairly simplified way, of course, but still saying that you can add this organizational dimension, saying who's responsible for these areas, or what are the departments that would take care and ask for things from these business capabilities, depending on how you're organized. And you can see that if this is really a mismatch of organization and the capabilities are not at all one-on-one, maybe not one-on-one, but at least a bit aligned, then maybe you would benefit from looking at the maps again and try to see if you can redesign them or redesign your organization or the way you're structured. So this way of a sort of putting filter on it with this base map is kind of a way of adding knowledge to the map that we already agree on. If you remember the example in the very beginning, where the different people had different pictures in their head, have they had a map like this one? It would not be a problem if somebody's thinking out of the process level and another one from the maybe system or change level. So let's take the next one. Here we have added something that looks like a, I don't know, snake or something. This is to represent the value stream of this enterprise. So how do we take value from the different capabilities and combine them into an entire stream of value that we could offer customers, and then sort of learn from, and then take another go when we have got our feedback and see how can we make this even better. So this in this train company could be maybe passenger traffic compared to freight, or commuting traffic compared to more long distance traffic, or something like that. So it's a way of looking at how we create value. And once you have that, I mean, the ability to actually tie that to the customer journey and to the different touch points that we identify is really critical and important to really be close to the customer and really make their world easier and create a greater experience. Here are some interesting matches that you can see. How well are we in our marketing ability towards what the customer is actually needing? And can we provide them with the right thing at the right moment? Or when you are in the train and maybe something is happening, could we provide the customers or the passengers with the right information to make sure that you know where you are, and so on. So this is a way of tying together the inside and the outside perspectives. But thinking from a customer journey or top task, depending on how you want to filter it, and the internal ecosystem in terms of the capabilities and the value stream. And then it gets even more interesting, because if you were to also add the organization, I don't know how many of you who sometimes have been in large organizations thinking that this is really silo game going on. In a way, we are sense making the kind of I don't know, the stretchy arguments between a department and an owner of a value stream is really interesting, and they're tricky because it's complex to make sense of these abstract things in play. But I've seen time and time over, when we use the Milky Way at customers, that by just sense making the organization and their sort of usually functionally ways of being organized and the value streams, it is really sparking a lot of interesting discussions and an interesting kind of shared knowledge of, okay, it's not as easy as only my perspective is the right one. We need to find a better balance here. And then another thing that you can do once you have a map like this, you could really zoom in to a specific point in time. I think in the Enterprise Pattern book, we talked about moments in time. That was one of the patterns. How can we really find a specific moment and then go from there and see what needs to happen before this and after this for this to happen? What do we as this enterprise wanted to create this experience? What do we need to prepare? What do we need to know about this person or this situation in order to really create a brilliant or fantastic experience in this moment, or just, save a bad moment. Maybe the train is late or something. So we take it like a slice. I think you call it the camembert slice, right?
Yeah. Well, again, because I'm living in Paris, so it's, it's when people here see this model, they would say it's a camembert. In other countries, maybe you could talk about a pie. But we actually have a pattern in our latest book, the pattern book that's called Moment in Time, which is exactly that. So you look at one moment of enterprise activity and what each of the moving parts are doing, and where do you need to change something in order to have impact.
And also being able to zoom into this specific situation, not being forced to go from the very top and all the way down, and then, from all this perspective, but being able just to jump in and say, this is what we want to do. But let's go on and see the next one.
Yeah.
Because because there's also a way of looking at this mapping that can really make the customer journey and then move into the capabilities. But here in this view, the emphasis is on the customer experience. And also, this is another way of using icons, using pictures that would show you different things in this model rather than text. And that is really strong from at least my experience in conveying and getting a sense of what's going on and more feel and touch to these maps that usually are very boxy and very grey. Do you want to add something here?
Yeah, no, just, if you look at the example from Jim's book before, it's kind of the same technique, right? We are using icons and arrows to depict what's going on, where there are loops, where there are more linear things, and also we can point out the relations. And someone said before in the chat, shouldn't the blue and the red be more connected? And that's exactly what we're doing here. So looking at the connection between the capabilities and the tasks, and that actually gives us products and services that we might want to consider working on to make this connection based on the model.
But the idea is here again to keep the base geography and then expand the different dimensions depending on what we're looking at, but still having the references of importance in the other layers. So let's go to the next one.
Go to the real life example.
Yeah, live example. This is actually being done somewhere, not just in education. That was the wrong one. It should be that one, exactly.
Yeah.
And this
go ahead.
The presentation got so excited. Now, this is an example from the company that I'm working at. It's Scania. It's a Swedish truck company. And we have been working with the Milky Way as a map for the last 2.5 years. And I joined them in February in the architecture team. So this is how we designed the overall geography. So it starts with doing the right changes. And here we make choices about what is a good change in our product or way of working or any change that we want to do. And then once we decided on the right ones, we move on to the sector that says doing the changes right. So make sure that we have the right type of methodology to develop things, everything that has to do with designing, testing, and integrating, all of those things. And then we have the section that says release the changes right. This is the very advanced industrial system. You cannot just change things. It needs to be really tightly controlled and really in a good manner, an efficient manner, and to make sure that it's safe on all the levels. And once you have sort of released that, then you go over to the more customer-facing part. And this is offer tailor-made transportation solutions based on the customer needs. And then we have deliver these things that with the customers ordered. So you have production, logistics, and all of those things. And then the last part of the pie is deliver value. This is where the actual usage of all our vehicles or all our products and services is coming into play in making life better, hopefully, for all the customers that we are serving. So this is the overall, and I'm going to zoom in. Obviously, it might be sensitive, but I don't think it's that sensitive because the icons are really valuable for us. But that comes through all the discussions and dialogues and shared knowledge building that we have been doing, building this map. So as you can see, we have a number of different icons, and each of these icons kind of tells the story kind of directly. And in here you can see the different types of delivery or design things that we are doing. I mean, there is obviously mechanical systems being designed, there is embedded system, electronic systems, but we are also designing new transportation services. There is a lot going on when it comes to designing cyber-physics systems, autonomous. Imagine an autonomous large vehicle coming on the road. I mean, would you trust it? Well, I would very much make sure that this is done in a very good way and with all the risk analysis and all the safety things going on. And that is part of this thing. And then you have the things in the middle, for instance, the integrated vehicle system, this ability to integrate as we develop and then make sure that we have products that work good together, not only as parts. So there is a lot of storytelling and a lot of thinking that goes into this base map that we call this one. And you can take the next one just to give you sort of a hint of how we have been documenting this. And here is just a screenshot from one of our trainings. So we are in the development part of the Milky Way, and this has to do with verification and process description. And there is a text. And you can see on the icon that this was a few months ago. Before there is this really huge transformation going on within Scania right now that goes towards more agile thinking, closer to the customer and so on. And even in this map, we can take the next picture because the icons are changing as we change what the icons are meaning. So this verify product and processes that was a good pick a year ago has now been improved into verify customer demand solutions and processes. So we are actually taking the customer into this icon, reminding ourselves that we need to have fast feedback loops and really think in terms of what is the customer value that we're creating here. Short thing here, I think we can take the next one. So you would see something that we used just a few weeks ago. We are not, I mean, I'm working in the part that is creating and maintaining all the internal information systems to make sure that we're supporting our design and our production and our delivery and all of those things for this entire industrial system. And we are, I don't know if you've been within these really internal organizations. It's easy that you're really focused on the information structure and all of those things. And we saw that we need to start to think about the customer journey. And even though we know that there are customers driving our cars, the closest customers we have are the design engineers, the production engineers, and all of those things. So by just adding this little journey, and not saying so much about it, but just saying that who are you designing for? Who is the user of your system? This sparked so much interesting discussions and really good ways within all the teams that are involved in this. And there are sort of, popping out different ideas of how we can make this customer perspective and maybe start to reshape how we have designed our teams as well, because if you see it from the customer experience point of view and the actual situation for the user, this is way more powerful for creating this fantastic experiences that we would like our designers to have, so they can design these fantastic things that we need to be able to offer in the market. So here, these are some examples of how we're working with this in a real complex major transformation case. And it's awesome. It's really fun. So,
right, thank you. And I just have I will do this very quickly because we have to look at the sketches if there are any. So you see that the Milky Way map actually is an anchor model where a lot of what other maps are capturing is linked together. EDGI is the modeling language that we are developing. It's short for an enterprise design graphical morphology. So we are morphing parts of the enterprise and translating between different maps and models. So we can capture all of these things and link them together. We can use tools for that. Qualiware is one of the first tools, actually the first tool that supports this language. And we're talking to other architecture tool vendors, also using Miro and Mural and all of these a lot to make the maps. Actually, there was a question which map you used, Annika, in Scania, and I think the answer is surprising.
Yeah, this is really simplified. It's low tech. It's a Visio, and it's a fantastic architect with graphical design skills. Well, you need to have them all.
Yeah. So if you're interested in maps and models, I can really recommend this book by Steve Whitler and Jonathan Wheaton about what kind of models you might want to make and what your community is that you're making it for. Is it tech people? Is it change people? Is it both? And you have the spectrum of different models. And I think the Milky Way is kind of, or napkin is kind of in the middle. So trying to connect all of those. And if you're really interested, there are more books like the Mapping Experiences book that I mentioned before, Intersection, about enterprise design, and the Enterprise Design Patterns book is our newest one, and the book on the Milky Way. And please join our association, our community. So we are developing a open source toolkit that we want to release by the end of the year. We are running a community and a Slack channel. We develop trainings and learnings and so on. One is coming up early June. And it's a 3-day training, Introduction to Enterprise Design, the Milky Way Maps, the Intersection Toolkit under development. And there are more webinars. The next ones will all be about patterns. So the enterprise design patterns, how to have impact, how to behave properly in the enterprise to actually have impact, how to create awesome maps, and how to practice this approach. And this is all. The presentation will be shared, the video will be shared, and I want to look at napkins. There are some napkins, let's see. And we had a lot of questions, so I think we can take a few more minutes to actually look at...
Oh, look at that.
So here we have Asakus.
It doesn't have to be more complicated.
Napkin map.
No, and then you add a customer journey. You start thinking, what do we do in between? How do we make this happen?
Here we have Ron's. I don't know why I don't see it. Oh, it's just a comment that he wants the slides. Here's another one.
Ah, yeah.
At the end is a happy client.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but the parallel drawing and then just getting these conversations going, that is part of, that is part of the major value that I see that we can bring to the table with a map like this at Scania. The ability to talk and to understand the different dimensions. And there are so many layers that you can kind of put on top of a base map like the one I showed you, and find ways of talking and thinking.
And Henning's ones. Oh, it's something else.
Looks like a Woodley map, doesn't it? Well, thank you for.
So yeah, your enterprise on a napkin can follow very different representations.
Yeah.
He said I misunderstood the task.
Yeah. And for those of you wondering, we will share the video and the slides, right?
Yes, and that's just case in point. You have different people around a table or in a webinar room here, and think of different things, and that's exactly why we're here.
Yeah, there is some questions in the chat. I was thinking of you had a question about how do you identify leverage points to inspire change in this model. And I think you need to go to where you are as an enterprise and what are the challenges or the aspirations that you have, and see what is that we need to change or need to address in order for us to be able to do the changes or create those experiences or whatever we're dealing with. And then you find maybe a moment in time, or maybe it is that you need to figure out we need a whole new value stream because it's a new type of product or service that you want to deliver. Or there could be other connections. Could even be such boring things as bad IT systems not supporting you with the right information at the right time and so on. So I think it really it depends on where you are. And I find that once you're familiar with the way of mapping the Milky Way, the way we've showed you, it is really strong in being able to allowing you to zoom in and zoom out, depending on what question you have. And the geography kind of remains the same. Not when you come down to actual infrastructure things, but as long as we're talking about what type of information and the capabilities that is providing them in business events, those traditional architecture things, they live well in this environment as well, and is able to be used by the other dimensions, such as the customer journey, top tasks, services, or whatever. I know. It's any more questions?
Yeah. Does it make sense to apply this to a specific enterprise domain?
My advice is usually to keep the map like this as ambitious and as wide as possible, because that was part of the idea with Milky Way. Because what we do as architects is always to sort of chop things into smaller pieces, and then we lose track of the larger picture. But then, of course, things that are really specific. I think that, for instance, HR is a domain where you could do this map by itself, and then it's kind of connected to the larger one, because that's such a specific area. But otherwise, I'd advise you to keep the ambition with the map as large as possible for as long as possible. After a while, you need to sort of cut and scale and sort of scope, but keep it as big as possible for as long as possible. That's my advice.
Then Henrik is asking, how do you identify leverage points to inspire change in this model?
I already tried to answer that, but you obviously didn't get it.
I would actually add that in another work stream that we're running right now in the group, the one on research and scanning run by Helgi, is we are looking at using research and assessment and observation and data science and these kind of data gathering methods to get signals, get hints, which of the facets might make the most sense, is the most helpful as a frame, and trying them out, even as a kind of rough sketches like we showed in the beginning, and see if they spark the right conversations, can help to look at which lens will reveal the leverage points. In the end, it's a trial and error kind of thing, because we are working with a complex system usually, which is an enterprise in its ecosystem. Roger says, isn't this just the same information from other models illustrated on one page?
Yeah. but with the addition of adding them, the connection and how they interact give you another layer of understanding and another layer of understanding how, if I do changes, so if I want another type of behavior, what is a good point to change at, rather than saying I always see the world in processes, or I only see the world in information models or processes, I don't know, or customer journeys. This is a way of connecting the dots and creating larger amount of knowledge together than having them in different silos, if you like.
Yeah, and Johan was asking whether with the slice, whether we would then manage to build a related view between each level within the slice or with the slice. I don't think that we always do that or always have to, only if it helps. Sometimes it's just good, to look at the Milky Way, like that time position. Mm-hmm. Really this pattern of moments in time. So you look at that, you use that moment to simplify and filter out everything that is not related to that moment. And thereby you don't have to look at all processes anymore, just the ones, like just those steps, and not all journeys, but just those moments, and not all systems, but just the ones that are touched, and so on. Sometimes it helps then to model that explicitly. Sometimes it's just drawing additional stuff on the map. Like, I think what we do a lot is we have a kind of rough generic Milky Way that shows the overall structure and dynamics. And then we trace, you could say it's like when you have a geographic like a map of streets, you don't look in detail at all the streets in your city at the same time. But once you have a route, you can look at the details of that route.
Yeah, and I think that it is a good way of having the overall picture, larger context, if you like, and then zoom in and scope, and then you can go back and forth and see, is there anything that we have forgotten? If we do this, will this affect something else? So you would jump back and forth, and it is this reference to the larger context that is really important. So I think that is, and not just. For instance, you could do the traditional zooming in from core processes and then all the way down to whatever task you're looking for, but that is only one dimension. Here we are able to zoom in, but bring all the dimensions, bring the customer things, bring the process information system, everything to this specific thing, and then do the changes and see how that would ripple out in the larger context in all facets at the same time.
And sometimes the slicing and the drawing on the map will spark more research or more questions. Like, for example, maybe you know the customer because you did some customer research, so you know what they want, what their environment looks like, and modeled that. But maybe there's some kind of staff interaction or some partner doing something, and you actually have to go back. In Toyota they would call that, do a Gemba walk, like go into what they are doing, maybe in the call center or in some kind of shared service center, and see why is this experience breaking down, and then add those insights to the map. So one of the theories of enterprise design is that we need to treat the delivery system, so the staff and the enterprise, the processes, with as much care and as much curiosity as we would deal with the customer and their reality, or the user.
Or the information model, depending on who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's,
there's a lot of questions about tools. Like, for example, if you could one suggestion is import Archie models into Mural. I don't think that's possible. We are actually looking into bringing Edgy, so the language behind these maps, closer to Archimate, but it's not like it's all work in progress. And the same goes for tool support with repository-based tools. For graphical tools, it's quite easy. So there's a Google Slide variant and a PowerPoint variant, and there's a Post-it variant, so you can make these models in quite low-key tools quite easily.
We're actually having this, as I said, at the Scania case at Invisio, and there's one person doing the editing and everything. And it might surprise you that once you have the base pattern and most of the capabilities, there are not that many changes on the base map that goes on. What we're doing is that we take the Visio file and we make a PDF, and then we put it into Whiteboard or Miro or any of those type of whiteboard tools right now. And then we have like workshops with this as a basis. People are referring to it as the wallpaper that we throw questions on, or challenges, or change ideas. What if we were to do this? And then we start drawing in these whiteboards, digital ones. So it's really, I think it has evolved, and it kind of, I before the pandemic and everything, I said we need paper, we need to have this on the wall, we need to touch it. But I'm kind of sort of turning into, we have really learned this year to use these digital tools and work with this digital whiteboards in a really interesting way that allows us to really explore together and zoom in and have those really great sessions together. So that's
and Daniel is just making the point that there should be a Spark CA plugin to actually connect those maps to existing repository elements. And this is kind of the idea that we are pursuing with not with Sparks yet, but with some of the tool vendors. Because, for example, in Qualiware, you have a meta model, you have a lot of existing ways to model these things, and we are not suggesting to change all of them and use our modeling language instead. So if you want to use BPMN, if you want to use Archimate, that's fine. But with the tool, you can actually say, okay, this element on the Milky Way or this element that is on a map expressed in edgy corresponds to some element in the repository that is maintained in another language. Also because these, like, for example, we don't have the elements to go into the depth of IT like Archimate. We don't have templates for personas or, your favorite service blueprint or customer journey template, but we want to connect to those and we want to link them together and have the Milky Way as this one geography that enables us to anchor them into this one representation.
Yeah, and this is what we're doing as well, because of course there are EA repositories and different types of tools that take care of application landscape and capabilities and so on. And there is a handshake between the capabilities in our Milky Way and the capabilities that is maintained mainly from an IT perspective in order to take care of the IT landscape, the integration, and all of those things. So there is this connection going on, but everybody who works in a large organization knows that there is a lot of things going on and different types of handshakes going on.
Right. I think we will wrap up here. Thank you very much for joining. And again, the invitation, if you would like to continue the conversation, please join us in our Slack channel, or I've put the links all on the screen, the books and the conference and the videos and a starter kit preview, which is something that we are working on. It's a preview of some easy to use models to get started with this kind of thinking, this kind of work. Also, the Milky Way Academy, which is run by our friends from IRM Sweden, and teaches how to do Milky Ways that are more looking at the architecture part in Miro.
Yep. But it's a good start if you haven't thought of it. It could be.
And great, yeah. And hope to see you at the next webinars or in Slack.
Exactly. And thank you very much for all the good questions and comments.
And drawings.
And drawings, yes. Well, enjoy.
And thank you, Annika. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.